good people? Welcome to the first episode of Up for the Challenge podcast. Here at Up for the Challenge, we sit with experts, historians, entrepreneurs, and pastors. We discuss history and innovations to the most pressing issues, specifically education. I am your host, Reverend Joshua C. Robertson. I am the founder and CEO of Black Pastors United for Education, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that aims to resolve the educational crisis in America by having the church participate. Today we have Dr. West, who is affectionately called Brother West. It would take me all day to get through his bio, but very quickly. Dr. West is the Dietrich Bonhoeffer Chair at Union Theological Seminary. He has a passion to communicate to a vast variety of publics in order to keep alive the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a legacy of truth-telling and witness-bearing to love and justice. Dr. Cornel West is also the former professor of the practice of public philosophy at Harvard University and professor emeritus at Princeton University. Most recently, Dr. West was one of the 2024 candidates for the United States president. Welcome to the show. So good to have you.
You bless me, and I salute you. What a force for good you are, and we blessed to be here.
Absolutely. It's a blessing to have you here. It's my honor, my privilege, and today I plan to have a good conversation with you. I think it'll be a challenging conversation, but I believe we are up for the challenge.
Well, brother, I just know the Lord is with us, whatever questions you have,
right.
And we're going to have a good time tonight.
Absolutely.
At the Rock Church.
Absolutely. For the town
That's
hall.
First Lady Shaniqua.
Yes.
And
Let's start with the nation's report card.
yes.
The National Assessment of Educational Progress, a congressionally mandated large-scale assessment administered by the National Center for Educational Statistics, give us these statistics. In 2022, as it relates to math proficiency, 35% of white students are proficient in math, 14% of Hispanic students are proficient in math, and 9% of black students are proficient in math. Reading. 38% of white students are proficient in reading, 21% of Hispanic students are proficient in reading, and 16% of black students are proficient in reading, and this problem is not new. In 1990, 15% of eighth graders were proficient in math. In 2022, 26% of students of eighth graders are proficient in math. Same thing in reading. In 1992, 29% of eighth graders were proficient in reading. In 2022, 31% of eighth graders are proficient in reading. And here's my question to you, Dr. West. Why hasn't education and the crisis concerning education that is plaguing America, why didn't it lead the national political conversation that led up to this historic election?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, though. The first thing I would want to do, though, I would want to draw a distinction between education and schooling. Because I think what those statistics have to do with schooling, and they're very sad, education is much deeper than schooling. You know, education is about integrity and honesty and decency. It's about shaping of the soul and the formation of characters. None of those statistics measure that education in the deepest sense.
Absolutely.
So that my concern would be, on the one hand, when it comes to schooling, it's clear that we don't have high grades on the report card. When it comes to education, it's even worse. That's the spiritual decay.
Absolutely.
That's the moral deterioration that we're wrestling with in this society and country and empire. And I think it's sad that that was not one of the central issues. It was one of the things that I tried to talk about, because I come out of a Christian perspective, so I look at the world through the lens of the cross. So when you look at the world through the lens of the cross, the first question is not, can somebody read? You see, some of the most magnificent songs ever created were created by enslaved Africans who could not read text, but they could read the world.
Yes.
Swing low, sweet chariot, all that wisdom there. So yes, we've got to make schooling and education much more central, but it just means that we have to have broader visions.
Absolutely.
We have to be concerned with the quality of the souls of our young people as well as the quality of their reading skills.
Absolutely. I think that, leads perfectly to my next question, because I think the black church has always played a role in the uplift of America, period.
Oh, absolutely.
But what about with education? Could you maybe speak on a little bit as to the historical role of the black church, civil rights, specifically as it relates to education?
Well, there was a brother named Smalls out of South Carolina who actually came up with a design for the first public education system in the country. It's fascinating when you think about that, you see. Because, again, if you're going to educate the least of these and make sure you speak to both their souls and their skills, then you're going to be concerned in the end with everybody. And therefore, you got an all-embracing school system. And this goes all the way back to the Reconstruction years. He himself was an elected official during the 1860s and 70s, before the Compromise and before the Jim Crow and Jane Crow set in. And he was then, of course, disenfranchised like other black folk in the South. But I think on another level, though, you see, a Martin Luther King Jr. and a Fannie Lou Hamer, they were also teachers. They were teachers by example, as well as teachers by utterance and propositions. Mm-hmm. And in the end, you and I know in our own lives, we think of our parents, we think of our coaches, you great athlete that you were. I tried to be a great athlete, but I fell on my face sometimes.
Sure.
But the greatest teachers that I've known have been those who exemplified in their deeds and in their relationships what it is to pass on some of the wisest lessons that we know. And so again, even when we think of our young people these days, they'd rather see sermons than hear them.
Live your creed.
Exactly. I like that, live your creed. Mm-hmm. And the deed and the creed.
Absolutely.
It's like the book of James.
Absolutely.
Tied together in that way. And so we've got to turn some corners, though, brother, which is to say we got to bear witness. We have to be more vigilant in our willingness to love one another, to be of service to each other.
Absolutely.
And to be surrendering to a will and a God that's greater than us.
Absolutely. During the pandemic, I speaking to the black church experience, and although my church is multicultural, multi-generational, it's multi-everything.
Wow.
And it's
the
in the
Rock Church.
Yes, and it's in the middle of a tough neighborhood, right?
Yes.
When COVID happened, and the public schools sent their students home for virtual learning, I started getting phone calls from parents left and right. 40 to 50 calls a day asking, can their child come to our church? And I'm like, no, there's nothing that we can do about this. But everything changed when I had a member of my church, single woman with a 7-year-old son. She lost her job because of COVID. She was our after-school counselor. So I said, okay, I have children from the community whose parents are, they need help and services. I have this lady who I got to help because she's a member of the church, and what is she supposed to do? So I hired her to oversee the academic day of about 5 or 6 students. And that's what she did. They were receiving the instruction and the curriculum from the cyber experience, and they were at the church all day, and I found a way to pay for that, right?
That's beautiful.
And from that, we formed the Rock City Learning Center, and that's really the impetus for Black Pastors United for Education, where we establish learning centers in churches. I think that the Church of Jesus Christ is the hope of the world. Now, as it relates to getting into the spaces of education and being able to educate, to start, scale, sustain educational opportunities that are non-traditional, that's what caused me to gravitate towards school choice and school choice laws, and the ability to leverage taxpayer dollars, our taxpayer dollars, in order to pay for private school education. And I see the church being the forefront of that. Imagine in America that every church in America could be a part of fixing those statistics, but also, like you're talking about, the morality, the ethics, the composition, the true composition of a person. But it's such a political issue. Could you lean in a little bit on school choice versus public school education? I don't think they should be versus, but in many ways they are.
It's both and rather than either or.
And is America capable of doing both and? Can we have fully properly funded public schools and school choice?
Well, I just think we had to be open to these things. We had to be jazz-like and improvisational. We had to be flexible and fluid and say what's best for the precious children. If we had a public school system that was stellar and was open enough to have pockets where people were able to express themselves religiously and communally and culturally and so forth, then it would be very different. But we have a relative failure on so many different fronts when we talk about the plight of children in this country. And so we have a state of emergency. You take somebody like Hakeem Mahabute, who's been running an Afrocentric school in Chicago for the last 40 years, Center for Positive Education, editor of Third World Press, which is the oldest black press in America, right? He's been opting for school choice because it was clear that the public schools in his section of Chicago wasn't working. And so we just have to be improvisational. I mean, I love the way you talked with such wisdom with Brother J.D. Vance the other day, who's now Vice President-elect, saying that, you know what, that we have this wonderful dialogue of integrity, and I don't see why we can't have a robust, high-quality public school system and at the same time have these various schools, religious schools, Catholic brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters, and others have had these kinds of schools, but we have to be committed to the children. And when you're committed to the children, you do anything.
Yes.
Anything.
What shocks me about this conversation is how un-American education is. Right? Like, and I say this, but you know, if you don't like Wendy's, you can go to McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, everything else. If you don't like one hospital,
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Don't leave for Kentucky Fried, right?
Jack in the Box.
Right,
too.
exactly, right?
That's right. That's
or
right.
whatever else, right?
That's right.
You know, if you don't like Harrisburg Hospital, you can go to Holy Spirit, you can go to UPMC. I mean, you name it.
Right.
God knows if you don't like the Rock Church, you can go to another church. Yes, yes, right.
That's right. That's right.
But as it relates to education, it's not like that. And I just believe if we're going to compete and collab on a global level, and if we expect our children now, whatever, and this is what I said during the campaign, whatever the presidents were campaigning for, whatever, in 30 years, we're all going to be off the scene. And these precious children that we have the responsibility to steward their future, I believe we're the trustees of their future.
Absolutely.
How do we prepare them for that time?
That's exactly right. Though,
we have to.
No, you hit the nail on the head there. But part of it too is that we just have to deal with our warped priorities. You see, this is the problem. You see, we're living in a country where we view life as a gold rush, which means you end up worshiping the golden calf. And you recast the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others to do unto you, as he who has the gold rules. Now that is about as idolatrous as it gets in terms of a way of life. And the biblical text has such a declaration for us to be anti-idolatrous and also to be not afraid.
Yes.
Those two are tied together. And therefore we have to imagine, we got to think what's best for the least of these, which embraces everybody, but you begin with that lost sheep. The priority, the lost sheep.
Yes.
This is what Jesus teaches us, you see. And that parable's no joke. There's deed, not just insight, but there's a source of a way of life in that parable.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what I see you doing with the fellow pastors in this grand metropolis of Harrisburg. I'm telling you, though, brother.
Striving to.
Oh no, you're doing a magnificent job, though.
Thank
Really, and you're keeping your own sense of Beirut of calling and vocation, and that's crucial because in the end, you always want to be in the world but not of it.
Yes, absolutely. We're called to be light and salt.
That's exactly. That's that living in the loaf, the salt of the earth. That's precisely that sense of not being conformed but transformed by something bigger than you. And that's crucial these days because, for so many people, things are either very grim and dim, and they have to be reminded that they got to let their light shine.
Absolutely.
No matter what the conditions or circumstances are.
Absolutely.
For others who are celebrating, they've got to recognize that self-righteousness is something that the Lord does not look favorably on.
Exactly.
And that's true for all of us. That's true for all of us.
Well, we have to live in the tension of
You got-
being humble, but also being bold.
That's exactly
Right.
right. Humility and tenacity
Yeah.
tied together.
One of my favorite quotes is from Bishop David Chandler Owens. He said, "When God needs a trumpet, a flute won't do."
Ooh, that's a fresh word, isn't it?
Yes. So we got to lift our voice prophetically.
And that's the anthem of black people.
Absolutely.
Lift every
Exactly.
voice.
Is that this past year you ran for the 2024 presidential? You were one of the candidates. Is that one of the ways that you were lifting your voice? And what did you learn through that process of running for the presidency?
Well, one, you see, I've been running for Jesus for 64 years. And so running for justice is always subordinate to running for Jesus. Running for president is always subordinate to running for Jesus. It's just a matter of making sure that one is true to what one's calling is and making sure that people talked about what Martin Luther King wanted us to talk about. Poverty, militarism, materialism, by racism, any ideologies that loses sight of the sanctity and dignity of human beings are made in the image and likeness of an almighty and loving God. And when I looked up and saw those running for president, I didn't see this particular tradition being in any way represented. And so it was a matter of being able to talk to fellow citizens and in some ways, trying to reintroduce America to the best of America. Because I understand Martin King and Fannie Lou Hamer and Dorothy Day, and Rabbi Heschel, Edward Said, there's so many folk. I could talk about Christian and your beloved mother, Madeline. I could talk about Irene and Clifton, Mom and Dad. They all crack vessels, but they represent the best in terms of a deep love and courage to love and hope and stay in contact with the humanity of others and remain surrendering to a God that has shaped and molded them.
Absolutely.
And so it was just a matter of me trying to be a witness and bear witness and be this wave in an ocean of this great tradition of these people who are trying to be love warriors and freedom fighters and wounded healers and joy spreaders.
Now, here's my thing. You were running for president, and I almost feel like the media was like, just didn't want you to get the mic. And here's the thing, the more the different rooms I walk in, the more and more I realize how the media plays such a critical role in public opinion.
Absolutely.
This past summer, I wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal, and this was the premise of my article, that school choice is a Republican-sponsored bill that has more Democratic support than Republican, and over 90% of black pollers have said they want school choice law. Over 80% of Hispanic pollers have said they want school choice laws, but we don't get them. Is this really democracy? That was the title that I labeled the article. It came out, Black voters demand school choice, right?
Those editors.
Right, yeah.
Those editors get to it.
Right, so, and I was like, mind you, I think the title takes away from the essence of and I'm just talking about how the media can sometimes maybe manipulate messaging, and I really feel like black people specifically, but beyond black people, need to be more discerning as it relates to what they receive from the media.
Absolutely.
Was that a part of your experience as you were running for president?
Very much so. Very much so, that you got a media that does not believe in robust expression of a variety of voices. And that cuts across political, ideological lines. It cuts across religious lines as well. It's as if they just, like on a football field, they just zero in just on this very narrow part of the field, as my brother puts it, between the 40-yard line, and that's it. And you got all these other voices out there. And we really do need each other. See, I don't believe any of us have a monopoly on truth. When Jesus says, I am the truth, this is a fleshification of truth, not a proposition or a sentence. It's a relation you have with a word that dwells among us as flesh. And because we all fall short, we need each other so badly. And the media, they don't allow the proliferation of variety of different voices at all. I mean, my dear sister Cardi B, when she introduced Sister Harris, she got more attention on mainstream media of her speech than I did in 17 months with 1,000 interviews and 300 speeches.
Wow.
But I don't measure the world through quantity. If the Lord calls me to jump off a cliff, I'm jumping. The Lord called me to bear witness in this way, I'm doing it. And of course, I'm moving right back into the classroom at Union Theological Seminary in New York City, where I think that's running for Jesus, running for justice, and trying to make sure I can touch souls and unsettle young people as they wrestle with the ministry and as they wrestle with their lives.
What do you say to, like, somebody like myself, right? I'm a young, black pastor, and, I'm trying to, and I'm not saying others are not doing it, but reclaim the tradition of those like Dr. King and Ralph Abernathy, and you name them. What do you say to us as it relates to black churches, beyond black churches, but churches in America being at the forefront of education? What can the church do to really combat these statistics and the current trajectory of education in America?
I think one is that so many of our young people simply haven't been loved the way you and I have been loved when we were children.
Absolutely.
You see, they just haven't been loved. I noticed at Rock Church, you all zero in on that John 13, love ye one another.
Absolutely.
That's at the center of it all. Those are not just words, you see. And love presupposes courage. See, right now we've got a culture, especially of professionals, who are obsessed with conformity and complacency. That's on the road to cowardliness. You see, courage means you hold on to integrity no matter how popular you are. You hold on to decency no matter how you're trashed. And you hold on to honesty no matter how much you're misunderstood and misconstrued. And I think young people, they're hungry for spiritual awakening, hungry for moral reckoning with themselves. And so that'd be true to your calling, which means you're going to have a relationship with fleshification of God, Jesus, that allows you then to speak truth to not just powers that be, truth to the people who you lead, oftentimes not in power, and then truth to yourself.
Yes.
All three of those fronts are required, you see. And then you keep that joy in your soul, because that's always the fruit of the love. You see, if you're a Christian and don't have no joy, something's wrong with you. Something wrong. You got that joy that the world didn't give you, and the world can't take away.
It's a resurrected Christ.
That's what, exactly. Brother, this conversation is rich, man.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
So
I appreciate it.
Rich,
I
man.
appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
It's such an honor.
No, the honor's mine, though, man.
Absolutely. That's all we have time for today, Dr. West. But viewers, you heard it first here. Thank you so much, Dr. Cornel West, for coming and being part of our podcast.
Lord, we praying for each other.
Absolutely.
I know I stand in the need of it, brother.
Absolutely. Likewise.